Hi, I'm Megan Sullivan, co-founder and director of research and development for the Invisible Histories Project. Today, we're going to do a really short and condensed overview of what IHP is, some things we've discovered in our time collecting in the Deep South, and ways that you can be involved with IHP and share the information about IHP with the folks you know. So the Invisible Histories Project, we do not have a physical space in a traditional sense. We are not an archive, we are not a history museum, and we are not a university or other education institution. Instead, we're an intermediary between LGBTQ communities, so individuals and organizations in the Deep South, specifically here, Alabama, Mississippi, and Georgia, which are the three states we are actively working in as of today, and institutions like libraries, museums, and universities. So what we do is we research through checking publications, word of mouth, other significant historical moments and people. We come up with a list of people, places, and events that have been important for the LGBTQ communities in each of these states. We then reach out to people, we make relationships, we get word of mouth referred to different people in order to collect materials. These can be digital materials, these can be physical materials, and again, these are from both organizations and everyday people. We research further with students and faculty and public researchers in order to find new projects that can be more thoroughly researched, and we make sure that the materials that we're collecting through the vetting of our repositories and our partners are accessible for the communities that they mean the most to. We are very invested in keeping materials as local as possible so that they can be used by the communities that they have mattered the most to. So IHP is a 501c3 nonprofit. We got this in October of 2016, and we began official collection in February of 2018. And by we, I mean myself and Joshua Burford, who is the other co-founder and director of outreach and our lead archivist. Josh had been working on a number of LGBTQ archives in Alabama and then North Carolina, and we had been talking and plotting and planning since 2016 to make IHP a reality for both of us. And in February, Josh began to work on that full time. And then in September of 2018, I joined full time as well. In April 2019, we were lucky and grateful to receive an Andrew W. Mellon Foundation grant that allowed us to expand and replicate the work that we had been doing in Alabama and Mississippi and Georgia through our partner institutions that I will show you in just a minute. In September, the Mississippi of 2019, the Mississippi expansion officially kicked off. And in January, February of 2020, the Georgia expansion kicked off a little earlier than we planned. And as y'all know, things are a little bit in hiatus right now while we're all hunkered down. But we are coming up with some different ways to connect with people that maybe we'll talk about a little bit later. So when Josh and I started working on IHP and thinking about how we could take these projects that he had done first on a campus and then next with a city and do it statewide or regional, like what would that look like? And so we had three main questions. Is there a queer and trans history of the U.S. South? If you look at mainstream LGBTQ history in the U.S., the South is often left out. If we're lucky, Atlanta is included, and oftentimes even Atlanta history is left out. So what is it? Does it exist? Where would we even find it? And if we did find it, is it robust enough to research? Could we do a whole project around LGBTQ Southern history? If we are to believe the rumors of the South, there isn't that much. So maybe we would start this and be done in a year and have to call it a day. And then how would these materials be located and preserved if they existed? Were people interested? Could we find repositories? We knew we did not have the physical space to house this safely and long term. So would people be interested? And just to spoiler alert, The answer to all of these is yes, yes, and very much so yes. So we found the affirmative answers for all of these once we had begun collecting. So, these questions came from some of the stereotypes that we're told about the queer South, that we're isolated, that we're the one queer person in a community. And, in order to survive, our communities have to tolerate us, or we have to be invisible, right? There isn't a community that we can find both in rural places, but also in urban places, with the exception of maybe Atlanta. That our lives are defined by fear and hate, and that we don't have a sense of self or community, and that the only route to happiness and success is to escape, to go to a large city or the East or the West Coast. That's the only hope for us. You can't stay here and be happy, which is just a bold-faced lie. I'm just going to spoiler alert the whole thing. And that we don't have a history, and unique and special and empowered communities and cultures, that we aren't worth researching even if we had it, because we are 20 years behind. And all of these things, as we'll talk about in just a minute, are false. There are stereotypes rooted in fictions of a left behind South, that don't hold true once we really start to talk to our people and collect our own histories. So just a little bit more about our partners. Our Andrew Mellon grant is through our fiscal sponsor, the University of Alabama Colleges of Arts and Sciences. They are helping us manage our financial aspects. They are distributing parts of the grant to our partners, who are the University of Mississippi Center for the Study of Southern Culture and the Sarah Isom Center. Our primary investigator at the University of Mississippi is the phenomenal Dr. Jessie Wilkerson, who has written a great book. You should Google her and go read her book. And she's right there in the pink, in the middle of the top picture. She's been fantastic. There's a whole group at the University of Mississippi who've just been fantastic working with us there. And then the University of West Georgia, the Center for Public History, and it has been Dr. Stephanie Shalafu, who is down there in the bottom holding the sign instead of working at an Invisible Histories Project table. The University of West Georgia is an absolutely amazing partner. We're so happy to have both the University of Mississippi and the University of West Georgia helping us as we're expanding, doing classes, doing research projects, helping us outreach to people. We really could not have been as successful without their help, and we're very, very excited to move forward with them. Here are some of our other partners that we work with in varying degrees, both on the national level and a local level. We really wanted to point out AIDS Alabama, who is so kind to donate a office space for IHP that we use for the pre-processing of collections and other administrative work there. So they've been really great. But please check out a lot of our partners. Most of them have amazing LGBTQ historical or LGBTQ resources in general. So please check them out. We have been collecting for around 2 years now. And so, Alabama is quite a bit further than the other states. So where are we right now in Alabama? We have over 50 new and unique collections at our various repositories. Our repositories in the state of Alabama are Birmingham Public Library, University of Alabama at Birmingham Special Collections, and the Alabama State Archives. They're all phenomenal and wonderful, and we are working currently to develop other partners, other repositories. The bulk of our collections can be found at Birmingham Public Library, and many of them are digitally online, so you can check them out while you're sheltering at home. So we have over 50 new collections. These have been located and physically collected by IHP. What happens is we identify a donor, we work with that donor to explain the process, and then we physically pick up the collections. We bring them back to the office. We pre-process them based off of the needs of our different repositories, which are either university or public libraries currently in archives. And then we take them to those facilities. They process them rather quickly because we are working with the University of Alabama and some other universities to have archiving students come in and help process our materials. And then they're available for research fairly quickly, or at least more quickly than they probably would have been without the intern help. So their turnaround time on these collections is pretty impressive, and we're very grateful for our repositories for how amazing they've been throughout this whole process. We have 4 collections that are currently being processed, so being pre-processed, being inventoried, and 18 in the process of being collected. In fact, this is probably a little bit higher now that we're doing some digital collections during the COVID shelter in home state that we're in. We have more than 40, well, more than 50, 60 identified future collections. And what this means is we have spoken to someone, we know that these collections are going to come in down the line. We have at least a soft yes from people for the future, right? That we just need to make a little bit more of a relationship, a little bit more of some details to come in. So it's quite a bit just for Alabama. There are 3 LGBTQ newspapers digitalized and online: Upfront, Noise, and the Tuscaloosa Free Press. You can find them at the Birmingham Public Library, and that was a partnership between BPL and the State Archives. You can also find the Alabama Forum digitized at the University of Alabama, although that is not a part of the Invisible Histories Project collection. We've done 9 oral histories and have 10 other oral histories planned. For oral histories, we only do at risk or people who we have significant relationships with and feel like their story is less represented within archival materials. So we're mostly focusing on older folks at this moment because we do not have an official oral history project in Alabama. There are 5 university courses that have been built around the materials and others to be built in the future. There are 12 student research projects that are coming directly from this that either have occurred or are currently in the process. And we have had 3 archiving interns from the University of Alabama. We also are working on a pilot database of LGBTQ collections that will have in-depth categories so that when you go to research IHP's collections, you'll be able to really dig deep and search not just by LGBTQ, but by Gay Bars Birmingham or community organizing in rural Alabama, those sorts of headers that will make research a lot easier and more rich as we move forward. For Mississippi, we have been working there since September of last year, and we are working with the University of Mississippi. There is a graduate student there doing research. There have been 7 new and unique collections that are in the process of being collected. So we have yeses, they just need to be picked up. In fact, that might be a little bit higher now. There are 40 plus identified future collections, and that is constantly growing as the research progresses. We have located 3 LGBTQ newspapers, which will be digitized sometime in the future. And there have been 2 completed oral histories just through IHP. The University of Mississippi and Dr. Wilkerson are doing a phenomenal oral history project with students and faculty that are collecting multiple oral histories throughout the state from their own project. We have a partnership with the Jackson Museum of Art that will hopefully have an exhibit or some programming down the line, and 2 new courses are being developed in the state around their specific materials. And then finally, we have an upcoming partnership with Southern Miss for archiving interns, very similar to what we're doing in Alabama with the University of Alabama. Georgia just kicked off. We just came back from our official kickoff at West Georgia before the shutdown and everything happened. And we're going to focus on rural and smaller urban locations. So basically most places outside of the middle of Atlanta, or even some into the Atlanta metro area, even though Carrollton is, I think, technically considered Atlanta metro. So we'll be doing mostly outside of Atlanta. We do have some Atlanta partners that we are working with, and anything there, we'll be working with them as things roll in. We have one collection, which is great because we weren't even supposed to start until April. So we have one collection ahead of the game. We have 15 identified future collections. And then we are beginning the research project with them and anticipate Georgia just overflowing with, just from Columbus alone. Columbus and Savannah already have significant collections that we were identifying. So they will be pretty significant in Georgia pretty quickly. We are working on a partnership to digitize some newspapers dating back to the early 70s, which will hopefully take place next year, even though it will take a few years to digitize as much as the state has. And then some research projects with students, faculty, and staff at West Georgia to locate more collections, both from the collections we've identified as well as some of these papers. There have been 2 courses built specifically around IHP materials, and there will be several more in the future. We are expanding the partnership, so we've been talking to the Georgia LGBTQ Archives Project in Atlanta, who we will be working with on some of the Atlanta things that we locate. There's a lot of overlap in states, as you know, between collections, so we'll be working very heavily with them. And then our timeline for collections was March. We've already got one, and then everybody's a little bit on pause right now, so just ignore that last part there. So what have we learned? Southern LGBTQ people are real. I'm sure that's not a shocker to anybody, but 33% of all LGBTQ people in the U.S. live in the South. So the highest percentage of queer people, the highest percentage of trans people. Mississippi has the highest number of same-sex families or same-sex people raising a child in the entire country. So there are a third of all LGBTQ people live in the U.S. South. So there are quite a few of us. And it's old. Our history, when we started, we were going to be excited if we found things from the 60s, maybe the 70s. That'd be great. See a lot of disco stuff. But we found things that are even older. There's a 1920s chapbook, or 1910s chapbook at the University of Alabama Special Collections. There's a 1920s drag performer from Birmingham and a 1940s lesbian artist couple in Birmingham as well. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. We're going to find many, many more of these throughout all of the states as we continue to grow. The Queer South was always politically active, both in a local sense as well as national movements like ACT UP and the March on Washington. And the South is deeply tied to each other and these other movements. People were moving around. They were going and moving other places for college and then coming back and teaching their own communities about the organizing that they had learned and then using them in their own communities. And we found that to be very true, that instead of there not being anything to talk about, we've just been overlooked. And so as we're discovering some of this activity and some of this connection to larger movements, we're understanding that the South wasn't just playing catch up, but oftentimes our folks were leading movements and directly involved. It just wasn't acknowledged. The South is not left behind, and you do not have to leave to thrive. We were always organizing and taking care of our own communities. It just looked differently, particularly in the Deep South, than it did in other places. And people here do find communities. They do find happiness, and they aren't just surviving, but often thriving through their activism, through their communities, doing LGBTQ work or doing other work. That the narratives and the myths around the LGBTQ South only serve to inhibit and prohibit us from feeling pride in what we have done and what our ancestors and those before us have also done. So how can you get involved? If you like this, the work that we're doing, and you want to support or get directly involved, first, you can donate your materials. If you're an LGBTQ person or have been involved in an LGBTQ organization and would like to talk to us about donating your materials. You can visit our website at invisiblehistory.org. You can email us at the email I'll show you in just a minute, or you can contact us on social media and we can talk to you about how that might work and if your materials do fit. If we had $1 for every time someone said, my materials aren't important, my things aren't important, I'm not important, we would not need to fundraise anymore. So your materials are important and we are very interested in collecting them and talking to you about them and assessing them with you. So please reach out if you think you've got anything you would like to share. Also, if you are a repository, if you are a university or library or archive, consider becoming a repository with us. Reach out to us. We'll talk to you. We are looking for as many archives as we can get to work with because we want to keep this material accessible and close. So please reach out to us. If you're faculty or teach in any kind of way, reach out to us about developing coursework, internships, and research projects for your students and yourself. We are at the point now where we have enough collections, we can do some really robust research, but unfortunately, because it's just Josh and I as primary staff, we do not have time to do those kind of in-depth research projects and need your help in that. Bring us to your campus or community event. We do a lot of public talks. We do a lot of traveling, small exhibits. So let us know about them. Let's talk about that. Send us an email and we can figure that out. Join the Queer History South Network. If you go to invisiblehistory.org/QHS, you can learn about that. It is a conference that happens every 2 or so years where we get people together who are interested in LGBTQ Southern history and archiving, and we talk about best practices. So stay up to date. There's some announcements coming out about that in the next few days, so make sure that you're checking the website for those announcements. Connect us with your students, faculty, and staff. Please share us. Send out our email, send out our website for people to use. This PowerPoint, this recording, send it to folks so that they can use it in their classes. And then if you do have an archive or access to an archive, work on creating a database of your LGBTQ collections. Right now, it's really hard to get an idea of what all is out there because no good, robust database exists. And we're hoping to change that, particularly through the Queer History South Network. You can financially support us. Again, we're a 501c3. We take online donations through our website, through Facebook, through checks and old school mailing as well. And if you would like, we can give you a tax letter for your support. We are very grateful for those who financially support us, particularly in these times when things are a little uncertain. So we are very grateful for everyone. $5, $1, $20, it doesn't matter. Every penny counts. Please go to our website, invisiblehistory.org, explore, check it out. There's a way to send us messages there. And then a huge thing for us, because we find so many of our collections and our partnerships through our social media, is to like us on Facebook, Instagram, and now Twitter. Yay! If you look up Invisible Histories Project, you can find us on all of these places. We post pretty regularly things that we find, articles of interest, pictures. You can really, see what all is going on there and maybe, see something that you might like to research a little bit more in depth. You can also find a link to the Birmingham Public Library LGBTQ collections if you're interested in seeing those. And finally, if you have questions or concerns or just want to, talk to us about the work that we're doing, you can email us at contact@invisiblehistory.org. Again, that's contact@invisiblehistory.org. And we will get back to you. We'd love to hear from you. And thank you so much.